Hi there, I'm Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, Goldie of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas, and I would like to welcome you to the Raven's Call. This is a show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects, just kind of whatever strikes my fancy, sets my mind on fire at the time. Big UPG warning at the beginning of this, as always. These are just the views of one simple heathen here in East Texas, Goldie of his tribe. My views don't even necessarily reflect the rest of my tribe, let alone greater heathenry as a whole. So my videos are only meant to be conversation starters and to get you thinking. So it's okay if you disagree with what I say. It's okay if you have counterpoints or deeper insights. My hope is that you will go and take these to your tribe and either use them to spawn a talking point for yourself or show them to your tribe and discuss and build your own ideas, build your own understanding of the world. You don't have to build everything based on somebody else's view. So we'll see where that goes. Anyway, all of that to say, I'm not some Ossopope. I am not some end-all be-all authority on things. So please don't think that that's what I try to portray in this video. If you're a long-time follower, you know where I stand on things. I'm very middle of the road on stuff. All of my contact information is down below. You guys know the drill. There's a P.O. box for mail-in stuff. There's email address, Facebook, all that stuff. I'm trying to get back to some more comments and stuff. Been increasing. I'm getting better at it. So that is the one part where I struggle with all of this is I'm not great at getting back to people. I can in an instant hit them, but it's usually I need some dedicated time to reply. And so I'm trying to set aside more of that. But I frequently give myself too much to do. So you know how that is. I'm sure a lot of you are that way. All right. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's subject. Now, today I want to talk about something from the lore that specifically is of some interest to me. As I've gone through lately my own experiences in life, I begin to think on things such as, the value of what really matters. In the last episode, I talked about passing down traditions and thinking about what really matters. And a lot of times I will go into the subject of, what is it that's truly important in life? What is it that we really get out of life? What is it that we need to value and appreciate the most? And I always come back to tribe and family, those immaterial wealth kind of things. And then you start to think upon material wealth and what material wealth meant to the heathens then, and what does it mean to heathens now? Because that's a very important thing. And as you guys, if you followed the channel for the last couple of months, understand, that's a very real thing for me at the moment. Because I was poised with a position wherein I had a choice to make regarding a position I could have taken and have been miserable but made good money, or to take some risks and hey, hello, B. back up, go do your thing. Oh, easy. So I was poised with this decision on whether or not I take this job that I didn't want and for good money, but be miserable, or do I take some risks and try something new, try something different, and try to find something meaningful to myself? And ultimately, I chose to take the risk and go with the more meaningful thing. But it does beg the question as to the value of wealth and how it was viewed by heathens of old and by heathens of now. Because there's a strong push in Western society to push things to extremes in dichotomies. There's an extremism in the general zeitgeist. If you don't believe me, take a look at the recent election and it will show you just how extreme people can get either way in their dichotomies. And so this modern sensibility tends to be applied to ancient ideals. And like I mentioned in some previous videos, it's not appropriate, really, to try and apply modern sensibilities to ancient ideals. Because culturally speaking, they don't necessarily coincide. The spirit of the time, the zeitgeist, is different. And the cultural norms, the normative elements are different. So it's really not appropriate to try and superimpose modern sensibility on ancient times. And one of the modern sensibilities, whether it be for good or ill, this point mostly ill, is this tendency to create a hyperbolic division between the elements of a dichotomy. Stratification is a huge thing here, and we're talking about, money is either all good or money is like all bad, and there's no in between. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at a lot of ancient Norse and Northern European and Germanic approaches to things during the arch-heathen times, there is a strong element of ambivalence when it comes to things like wealth. They could go one way, they could go the other. It actually depends more upon the application of said wealth as to whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. The same thing is said of magic within ancient heathen society, because in some instances, like a vulva or something, is seen as good, is seen as a folk healer, as a seeress. Not a vulva seen as a folk healer. You get what I mean. Not everything was big bad evil witch, but there are still instances of big bad evil witch, particularly in reference to some of the Finnish witches that are introduced in the sagas and Eddas, especially in the Eddas. And they're said to, turn around backwards and look between their legs and speak. And it's complicated. And I could see somebody who doesn't understand specific magic rituals, especially from a cross-cultural point of view, misrepresenting it in this fashion. That makes sense to me. I can understand where they would come up with this kind of imagery. And especially, you'll notice in those instances where those troll wives and, the big bad evil witches are, where they arise, the magic is being used against the protagonist of the story. Whether the protagonist is in the right or the wrong is irrelevant to the fact that in these instances, the magic is usually used against them and counter to their actions. And if we'll remember from some of the studies we've done in things like We Are Our Deeds and some of the other elements of heathen morality, what is good for the tribe is what benefits the tribe or the inner, and what is bad is what runs counter to that, or strengthens the outer opposed to the inner. So in this instance, yes, this would be bad and evil magic because it's being used against the self. It's being used against me and mine, and therefore it is bad and evil. But in instances where magic is being used to help the tribe, then it is a good thing. So one of the things that I see people try to do is to blow out of proportion the general view with regards to things like wealth or magic. And I'm specifically hitting on the magic thing here because it's easy. It's easy to point out in this instance. Because what you end up with is, like in modern times, people that really embrace the magic are like, well, everybody back in the olden days embraced magic and it was a part of life. No, actually they didn't. There was just as much division back then about magic as there is now. It was a little bit more commonplace, and some of the things that have been denounced as magic weren't thought of as magic back then. But some of the more codified forms of magic, such as Seder, there was mixed emotions about. There are some accounts of Seder being viewed as a good thing when a seeress would come into a tribe and read the weird of the tribe and help them fix whatever's wrong. But in the same, it can be seen as bad because a seeress who would be using her divinatory powers against your tribe for the betterment of another would therefore be a big bad evil witchy woman, as opposed to big good awesome witchy woman. Yeah. The BBEG thing is from D&D, Big Bad Evil Guy, and so I've just amended it to fit. Anyway, so why am I going on about this? Well, it's simple that in the modern times, similar to the witchcraft thing, people tend to apply modern sensibilities regarding wealth to the olden days as well, and they were just as ambivalent about wealth as they were magic. There was a mixture of emotions when it came to magic, and there's a mixture of emotions when it comes to wealth. Wealth was wonderful. Wealth was great when it was shared freely. A great compliment for a king is that he is a hater of gold, or a hater of rings, or he is a ring giver. This is an individual who gives out arm rings made of gold and bestows them upon his followers in such a way as to be generous and honoring their contributions to the well-being of the tribe, and especially to the progression of that particular chieftain, king, leader of whatever kind. But wealth was also directly correlated to the strength of luck for a tribe, it seemed, in a lot of ways, because those that had strong luck would naturally amass wealth. It meant that they were making good decisions, and that luck was in their favor. Therefore, things were just turning out better for them. Their business dealings were stronger. Their hauls were better. Things like that. The seasons were kinder to them. And so wealth was kind of a material side effect of strong luck. And strong luck is what they wanted. They wanted to be lucky. They wanted to be strong with luck, because that's what helped them survive and helped them do well. One of the ways that luck works out that way is through the amassment of wealth. Now, in modern days, I see a strong push in this whole dichotomized world that, those that amass wealth are evil and that wealth corrupts. Okay, yes, that can be true. It also isn't always true. I have known some individuals personally with money that I would consider to be corrupt individuals. I have known some people with money that I would consider to be amazing people and just absolutely wonderful. Now, a lot of people will talk about inherited wealth. Well, inherited wealth is the result of Orlog. It is the result of wise choices and strong luck of previous generations, and the individual benefiting from that. They can, of course, squander that, just like anyone can with luck. Wealth is the same way. They can inherit all of that money and then blow it, or they can make poor decisions and fail to upkeep the influx of that, the dynasty that has created this influx of money and this flow of money. They can disrupt that through poor choices and ultimately lead to the demise of their fortune. Or they can do well with it, and they can build upon it, and they can make it grand and great and take care of their Ningarth for generations to come. And that's the trick. It's about, in the instances where it seems to work well, is when it is used to care for the Ningarth and to help the Ningarth grow. Now, ring givers and gold haters, they would give freely to their people, to those that followed them, or to those that were friends of their tribe, that were strong individuals. They would use these gifts to broker peace between tribes and clans. They would use these gifts to improve relationships with other individuals that were of power and were important. Because keep in mind, when you're talking about gold on this level, you're talking mostly about kings and chieftains and things like that. Those that would naturally amass, because they would be the focal point for the luck of the tribe or the clan or the kingdom, whatever, and it would all focus up there, and they become that focal point. I have some theories about the idea of the focal point of luck and how it interplays with sacral kingship. But that's something to come back to at a later date, I think. That's going to take quite a bit of fleshing out before I'm ready to really speak on that. But, so these kings would amass this gold, right? And they would give it out to their vassals. They would give it out to their people. They would give it out to their followers. And this was seen as a great thing. This meant that they were generous. They were well off, and so well off that they didn't need it. It was like nothing. So they would just give it freely. Here, take these rings. Here, take these. This is gold. This is wonderful. This is immense. And I've no need of it. Where in all actuality, yes, they cared about the numbers, but it was partially for show because everyone knew that it meant something because this was precious metal to them. And so, because of a shared cultural understanding of the value of this material, the gesture had a universal cultural impact. And therefore, the ruse of being a hater of gold, that it means nothing to me, was just simply accepted because that was part of the show. That's part of what you did. That's how you did it to show respect for others. You deserve this. This is good. Here's for you. This is from me as a sign of our friendship, that kind of thing. And as we know in the Havamal, gifting is seen as a sacred thing. It is seen as the reciprocity of gifting is extremely important. So when you're talking about gift for gift and things like that, then you see that the gift given by, and I've done some with the caste system in the past where I talk about, reciprocal obligation within a caste system and how that plays out, mostly in order to, let you guys see how it can play out with relation to your own tribes. But we're going to revisit that here because in the instance of a king or a chieftain giving to one of their vassals, the gift is often far more than the individual can repay. The individual repays that gift through loyalty and support, upholding their obligations. And this gifting from the king to their vassals is something of an obligation to the king or the chieftain to provide for and honor their people. It's providing a moment of honor to individuals, and in so honoring them in a public space, they are upholding their end of the obligation to raise the fame of this individual, to raise their gefrain, to raise their luck, to extend the king's luck or the chieftain's luck to them, and to bring them into that. There's a lot going on here, both from a cultural and from a metaphysical level. And so the gifting element is huge. And so this is really where I wanted to get in on things, is because if you look at the story of Gullveig in the Voluspa, Gullveig is a character that comes up a lot, okay? And Gullveig is one that I have mixed emotions on, because Gullveig is in exactly 2 stanzas of the Voluspa, yet is given a fairly heavy following in some circles based on this very little bit of information that we have. And there is supposition that Gullveig and Freyja are the same goddess. You've seen my video on the whole reductionism and heathenry element of things. Despite my stance on reductionism, I actually think they're onto something here. I do think that Gullveig, there's a very, very strong possibility that Gullveig is another name for Freyja. There's a lot that just meshes up here, and we'll see here in a second. Gullveig is a name that roughly translates to gold lust, gold power, drunkenness on gold. Gull is for gold, and Veig is a word that comes with some different connotations. It can be power and strength. It can be drunkenness, intoxication. All of this hinting at gold lust and a recognition of the power of gold, the corrupting power of gold. And it was said that Gullveig came to the gods in their house, and she was killed 3 times, and she came back from the dead 3 times. That she introduced to the gods the lust for gold, gold lust, through her name, and that she was bad news in general. She would come in and cause witchery and beguilement, which I think in a large way is correlated to this whole the gold lust element of things. Plus the ambivalent point of view on magic, which is why I covered that earlier. And so let me give you some straight from the lore, okay? I've got a couple of different versions of this. The first one that I am going to read you is from Hollanders. Not Hollanders. I'm going to read Hollanders in a second. I'm going to read you Jackson Crawford's first. Now, if you guys haven't followed Jackson Crawford online, guy's an excellent linguist, understands more about Old Norse than most anybody right now, as far as I can tell. He's a professor in the subject, and they're really good at what he does. And he's very approachable. He's got a great voice. Love his videos. And I really like his approach on things. He is a historian. He's not a heathen. He's not even a historian. He's, I think, a linguist. Because it's Old Norse literature, I think, is what he is a professor in. He has his doctorate in. But he understands runes. He understands all kinds of stuff. And better than most people nowadays. So you can follow his stuff. He's got tons and tons and tons of videos. Tons of videos. If you ever want to know anything about Old Norse as a language, or some of the Viking period insights based on literature and things like that, then he's an excellent source on that. So he's not a heathen, so he doesn't have heathen sensibilities. He doesn't have the heathen worldview on things, so he misses the boat sometimes on the integration of Old Norse into heathenry, and sometimes I see him make misconceptions on these things, as far as what I can tell from a Norse or a heathen worldview element of things. But he's the one with the doctorate, so I don't know. Great guy from what I've seen online. I like watching his stuff, so I subscribe to him. Alright, so this is Voluspa, stanza 21. I remember the first murder ever in the world, when Gullveig was pierced by spears and burned in Odin's hall. They burned her 3 times. She was reborn 3 times, often killed, not a few times. Still, she would live again. They named her Heid when she came into their homes, a sorceress who foresaw good things. She knew magic, she knew witchcraft, she practiced witchcraft. She was the pride of an evil family. Alright, so that is that one. He goes on to mention Gullveig again in number 23, although her name is not mentioned specifically in the stanza. Jackson Crawford takes some liberties with the structure in order to bring out what they mean. It's not a transliteration, but he is trying to translate into modern speech what they're talking about, to make it more approachable, which is why a lot of people like his stuff, because he directly translates it himself. He doesn't go off somebody else's translation and then paraphrase. He goes directly into it. So in stanza 23, he says, Then all the gods went to their thrones, those holy, holy gods, and came to a decision about whether they should endure Gullveig's depredations or whether they should seek revenge. So all of this is in the build-up to the Aesir-Vanir War. And in the Hollander translation, you will see it says, I ween the first war in the world was this, when the gods, Gullveig, gashed with their spears, and in the hall of Har burned her. 3 times burned they, the thrice reborn, ever and anon, even now she liveth. Heid she was hight, where to houses she came, the wise seeress and witchcraft plied, cast spells where she could, cast spells on the mind, to wicked women she was welcome ever. Now his 23 is, Then gathered together the gods for council, the holy hosts, and held converse. Should the Aesir a truce with tribute buy, or should all gods share in the feast? So this is, of course, the build-up to should we go to war. And as you can see in the Hollander translation, there is no mention of Gullveig's name again, but Crawford obviously pulls Gullveig back into stanza 23. She's only actually mentioned in stanzas 21 and 22. So, just for you there, that's the Voluspa in the Poetic Edda. So, that's the Jackson Crawford translation and the Liam Hollander translation. I just didn't feel like bringing my physical book out here, so I've got it on the old iPad. So, tells you how many copies of Hollander's translation I have. I'm a big Hollander fan. So, what do we do with that? Well, obviously we see that there's symbolism in the repetition of the Holy Threes, that Gullveig is brought to the hall, and she is killed 3 times, and she is reborn 3 times, and still continues to live. We see that Gull and Veig mean the drunkenness on golden power, the lust for the power of gold, and we see that in the imagery, we see Freyja is said to cry tears of gold, and that she is the one that brought Sjerven to the gods, that she is one that brought witchcraft to the gods and taught them their ways. She is Vanik, and this Gullveig instance very much, there's an ant on my camera who is like trying desperately to get in the shot. What we see in this Gullveig instance is that Gullveig is trying to, we think, broker peace. We think she was the harbinger of the the vanguard. She was the initial messenger of the Vanir when they were going to battle, when they were deciding whether or not they were going to go to war, because the subsequent stanzas talk more upon the preparation for the Aesir Vanir War and how things go. And the part of the reason that people think, and that I also think, that there is an element of correlation between Gullveig and Freyja is the covetous nature of gold lust and the covetous attitude that everyone has regarding Freyja. Because you've got to think, Freyja is, like in the instance with the dwarves, when Freyja lays with the dwarves in order to get the Brisingamen, she is... There's a lot to her that is in material gain. There's a lot of association to physical abundance with Freyja, the gaining of gold, the gaining of crops and land and prosperity. There's a lot of times there's a cultural correlation between goddesses of beauty and love and lust and gold in general. There's also a power to Freyja. She is a battle goddess, and she is a taker of half the dead on the battlefield. And so there's a lot of things here that on a subtle level, on a deeper level, you can see some correlations in ideology and thematic elements that lead me to believe that Gullveig was indeed probably a guise of Freyja. Freyja, who is said to have worn the falcon cloak that would allow her to take the shape of a falcon. Now, most of the time, actually, I don't think in the sagas we ever see Freyja actually use the cloak, but she is in possession of the cloak. She is the keeper of the cloak. I think the only one we actually see use said cloak is Loki. But Freyja is the keeper of it. Freyja is the owner of it. And therefore, we know that Freyja is not a stranger to shapeshifting. And even though it's not expressly mentioned in the Eddas, that doesn't mean that stories didn't exist about it, that just didn't get recorded and didn't survive. Because we have to remember, we're dealing with about probably 2% of the actual mythology that has survived. A vast majority of the mythology itself would have been lost to time because it just was never written down. We see archaeologists and sociologists find references to stories all the time that, we may not even know their references to stories because we don't have the cultural context or the literary context to compare this pictograph on the wall to the story of Thor doing this, because the story of Thor doing this never really survived. So it's up to us to guess whether or not that symbol actually is a symbol of Thor, an earlier proto version of Thor, or if it's completely unrelated and it's a blacksmith, or it's just a very bad drawing, or it's graffiti. There's all kinds of things that play into this. So how does this all play out in the modern day? Because we talked about the introduction of this. This is bringing in gold lust to the gods. And we have seen the gods in later times do things in greed and gold lust that did not end well for them. In a covetous pull for power, they have made some less than spectacular decisions. Frequently, they end up well for them, and a large part of the time, Loki's involved. You've got the wall, and specifically again there, Freyja was the supposed payout if the giant completed the wall around Asgard, and the gods did not want to pay her out. They wanted to keep Freyja for themselves, and that should tell you something. No one wanted to let go of Freyja. Everyone wanted to keep Freyja for themselves. Even in the stealing of Thor's hammer, Freyja is the price asked for the return of the hammer. Freyja is consistently seen as a commodity by outsiders, and is an individual coveted by the tribe themselves and kept close. And so there is something to explore there. There's definitely something to explore there and look at and see why these themes show up. That's something that I intend to do some more digging on in the future, and some more thinking and postulating on. The largest problem with this is remembering that, one, you cannot apply modern sensibilities to arch-heathen era source material because they don't coincide. And two, these are not primary sources. These are filtered through those that wrote them down. And so you do not have the original story in front of you. You have a version of the story that was written down and then has been translated, I can't tell you how many times. So those are things to take into account. Because it's entirely possible that Gullveig was mentioned more in more stories. There may be something that expressly separates or, definitively combines Freyja and Gullveig. That's not really the point of this right now. It's easy for me to see Gullveig as a guise for Freyja, coming in a serious capacity to try and give portents to the gods that going to war was not a good thing, and that peace was more profitable to them, and that in the end all would benefit from peace. But the gods, not wanting to play ball and killing the messenger 3 times, and going to war and finding that the war was not going to end, so they end up calling a peace, a treaty. And what is the price of the treaty? Freyja. And Frey and Njord. But that's what they get. They ask for Freyja. They get Freyja because they see the value in Freyja, and they covet Freyja from the beginning. And they bring her in because she is powerful, and because she is valuable, and she is of great worth as a person. It is easy in the way that things are broken down to, like I said before, outsiders tend to treat Freyja like a commodity, but I do not feel like the gods themselves treated Freyja like a commodity. I feel like they recognized the true value and worth of her, even though the outsiders only saw her for surface value. That sounds like an interesting thought process to expand upon. I mean, shouldn't we all think about the fact that our Enengard, those people that matter the most to us, see us for our true value, while the outside world only sees us at surface value? That's a thing. Maybe the outside world thinks of us as a commodity, and only those people that matter the most to us, I'm still chasing ants off my phone, only those people that matter the most to us actually see our core value, our true value. That's a thing to think about. There's something to take away from the Gullveig Freyja story. So, but it also introduces gold lust, and there is a lust for power there. There is a lust for the pretty, and the gods definitely engage in gift cycle. They definitely, the whole exchange of Loki, getting the gifts for the gods, the Skithbladnir and Mjolnir and Gungnir and all that that come from the dwarves, the host of holy artifacts, the competition of the dwarves. This is, again, a gifting thing. These are gifts given to the gods, and who gives the best gift gets the blessing. In this case, it was Loki's head. But it's very much coinciding with all of this. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that they introduced, that Freyja would have brought with her the gold lust and the introduction of this element, because it is a catalyst of sorts, and it plays a certain part, and it allows the gods to build in strength and power in such a way that they can provide for others. Let me go back to another source here real quick, and I don't have the actual translation credits on this one. I'd have to look them up, but it's a translation of some different rune poems. One is in the Icelandic rune poem regarding Fe, or Feu, the rune that most correlates to material wealth. Just to show you kind of the ambivalent nature of Northern Europeans to wealth in general. And just for reference, I'm getting this particular breakdown because it's all in a nice little thing here. This particular thing from NorseMythology.org, Norse-mythology.org. It's Norse mythology for smart people, for those that aren't familiar with the site. Sometimes they throw up some really good stuff, and I like to see some of the interesting takes on things. They do have an article on there that is all about Gullveig and mirrors a lot of the insights that I already have myself. So they have some quick translations up here of the rune poems. I don't want to go digging for them, so I'm going to be lazy and grab from here. So, in the Icelandic rune poem, wealth, source of discord among men, and fire of the sea, and path of the serpent. So, this is very evidently a negative viewpoint on gold and the impact that it has on humanity, on the poison. Because path of the serpent, we can assume that we're talking about venomous serpent, something akin to Jormungandr, etc., etc. And so it is poisonous. It's poison to man. Fire of the sea gold. For the Norwegian rune poem, wealth is a source of discord among kinsmen. The wolf lives in the forest. And jealousy and covetousness, recognition there. And then from the Anglo-Saxon rune poem, with a slight Christian overlay, as they point out, wealth is a comfort to all men, yet must every man bestow it freely if he wish to gain honor in the sight of the Lord, blah, blah, blah. From there you see that gift for gift. It's okay to amass wealth, but you must also be giving with the wealth in order to be... And again, the Christian overlay of charity elements. But this does coincide with the arch-heathen element of freely giving, gift for gift element. But the focus wouldn't be giving it away just to anybody. Amassing wealth just to spread it to nobodies necessarily. So it's not necessarily correlate to charity. It is more gifting specifically and strategically. So just kind of keep that in mind, because the conversations on altruism are an entirely different thing, and I'm not going to get into that. But yeah. Anyway, so the gist here is that it's okay to amass wealth. It's okay to build strength and power and to do all of this, but not to let it go to your head. Don't be stupid about it. Don't be so greedy and covetous that you cut off your Inengarth, that you cut off those people that matter the most to you, because those are the people to whom you have obligations, not to the gold itself. Be free in giving to those that matter the most to you, and understand that giving can build relationships with others. In the modern era, it's easy to get lost in the pursuit of gold, in the pursuit of money, and forget that what really matters is the Inengarth. What really matters is the family. You get so lost in your obligation to provide money for the survival of the family that you forget to actually be a part of the family. You forget that, while it may start with Freyja, the rune row ends with Otala. And that's a deep thing there in my mind. And as I go through this, and I'm experiencing this upset in my employment status, I had to pass up Freyja for Otala. There were things in the realm of Otala that I could do that mean less Freyja, but I had an option for more Freyja, which would allow me to more easily provide for my Otala. It's a weird balancing act, and both have value. Sometimes you work a crappy job that you don't like because you need to make the money to provide for the people that you love. That's why you do what you do, is to provide for those that you care for, those that you love. There's nothing wrong with that. You should be proud of yourself for standing up and doing what you need to do and take care of the family. That's an honorable thing. Whether or not you enjoy the job, the fact that you're doing it and taking care of your people speaks extremely highly of you. That's another thing. People go all about, you need to chase your dreams. You need to be, pie in the sky, chase your dreams, do what makes you happy. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, that kind of crap. All good stuff. I know, all that kind of crap. No, it's good stuff. It's positive things to think about, but it's not universal. It's not real. It's not middle of the road. Sometimes you've got to do things you don't want to do in order to provide. There is a necessity there. There's a need fire there. That's the nautis. So sometimes you've got to go through that stuff in order to provide for those that matter the most to you, the Otala. Sometimes you do get the luxury of being able to build an empire of career around something that you love and love to do. And so that's a beautiful thing when it gets to happen. Not everybody gets to do that, but those that do should be extremely happy because your luck is strong and you're doing, wonderful things for yourself and your people at home. As long as you still are, because it's easy to build that empire and to do great things with your career, only to find that you have alienated your spouse. You don't know your children. You haven't seen your parents or your siblings in like a year and a half, or at least since the last major holiday. It's easy to lose sight in the daily drudgery, the dagas. It's really easy to lose sight of Otala. I'm just saying. I see the runes as a journey, and I know I don't typically go off into my runic correlate conversations. I usually save those from when I'm talking to other Vikis that actually get what I'm talking about, and I can simply say, that this is all your idol from Freyja to Otala. All you have is Evas. And they get it, because they understand what I'm correlating to. But this is a subject that's been of some thought to me lately. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about Gullveig. I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of the fact that you can't necessarily correlate modern sensibility to olden sensibilities, to call attention to the fact that there was some ambivalence regarding magic and money back in the day, and that there's similar ambivalence today. Things haven't changed all that much with relation to that. And it's an interesting thing to see. That's all. It's interesting. Not really making a point there. If I had to say there was any point in all of this, it would be to think about what is actual of worth. To think about what is the Otala versus the Freyja. Both are necessary, but it's got to be a balance. And if there's not balance, you can have all Otala and no Freyja, and then the Otala starves. That's a thing. I don't know. It's a thing. So those are points of conversation. Hopefully this will give you guys something to spur your own conversations on. Hey Lolan, And you will be able to, sorry, there's a crow in the background. You will be able to have some interesting conversations with your own people about what matters and where you stand on things. Keep in mind, arch-heathens did not have, there's not some antitrust stuff back in the days of arch-heathenry. That wasn't what it was about, you know. There are capitalism to an extreme. Abused capitalism is not the same. Socialism to an extreme and abused socialism is not the same thing. That is corruption on both levels, and so those don't necessarily correlate to arch-heathen times, and people are going to try to correlate different things. That's not the way it works. Doesn't correlate because their systems are different. There are some elements to it that are similar, but worldview sensibilities do play a difference in how wealth is valued and what wealth stands for. So, you know, for a king, wealth is extremely important. For a farmer, crops are extremely important. You can trade and barter your way into whatever you need to and survive. You can grow what you need, you can make what you need, and then as long as you have enough to survive and do well and be comfortable, then you are wealthy. You are strong. A man may be of great wealth if he has 12 cattle and, you know, a dozen chickens and has enough eggs that he can actually afford to give some eggs to his neighbors. There you have the gifting of the gold hater, but you're an egg hater. You have enough eggs that you can just freely give them to your neighbors and friends, and they may have extra honey or they may have extra milk, and they give to you. That's the way tribe works. And that's the same thing as the king and the gold. So keep that in mind too. It does correlate down the classes. It just changes as to what the specific commodity used is. And gold is the commodity of kings. Kings are the subject of sagas and eddas. Ergo, gold is the commodity of metaphor for literature. It does not mean, I mean, you can look at the sagas and see that there's a strong thing of, you know, this man was wealthy. He had a dozen oxen. He had, you know, half a dozen sheep. You know, there's weird stuff. That's not weird at all because it's natural, it's pragmatic, and it's, you know, Han's doing well. He's got 4 goats, and I've only got 3. I can't seem to keep the 4th one alive. He's doing pretty good, you know. His luck must be strong. He's got a dozen head of cattle out there. You know, that kind of thing, you know. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point, but I think that was an important point to ramble upon, that there is indeed a correlate to across the class system. It's not just upper class. It correlates all the way down as to what actually the value of what matters to you. And it is relative to station and other things like that. So anyway, the whole gist is recognizing value and trying to find balance, not giving in to gold lust, but recognizing the value and necessity of things. Lots to think on there. Anyway, I'm going to let this go here. Thank you guys. I appreciate you all for watching. Hopefully you didn't find this too rambly and too out there. My head's going in a lot of different directions about things. So hail to you all and thank you. May your hearth fires burn bright. Okay, so updates. Let me think. Not much really. We got a D&D session this coming weekend, so hopefully, as long as everything goes according to plan and we can make it happen, I may have some more fun D&D stories on there. I did go up on TikTok and share one of my NPC's voices. They were doing the whole what was it? The customer service voice thing where people were sharing their customer service voices, and I had one that was quite the opposite of what you want in a situation. Gnomish little librarian that just went ape on my party because they came in and, you know, were asking for some very interesting, either superly specific or superly vague, either way, books in the library, and it was just fun. It was hilarious. We had a blast with it. So you guys can look at it on TikTok if you want to. I'm up there with Eric Word Weaver Sjerven, same as I am on everything. So Other than that, the work thing continues being what it is. We got some things in the works, so hopefully I will have some updates in the near future. Right now, I don't have a whole lot, but I do intend to have some updates here, hopefully this coming week. Fingers crossed, I've got some stuff in the works that I would really like to see play out there. Between my dad, my brothers, and I, we got some irons in the fire. So we're hoping we can actually turn them into something. So other than that, life is rocking along fairly well as always, like everybody else. I don't have a whole lot interesting to say on that subject right now. It just is what it is. So anyway, maybe I'll come up with something and add it in post afterwards. I don't know. It's fun. It's silly. It's whatever. But that is life in general at the moment. So I'm going to jump into this episode. You guys have already watched it, so I hope it goes as well as I have planned for it to. Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff. You know how that goes. But I do get to show off my copy of, Jackson Crawford's Poetic Edda. Which I love it. I'm still a Hollander guy, mostly. I do like Jackson Crawford's. Hey, look, mosquitoes. It's like, mosquitoes. Explains why my arm itches. It's alright. I'm a big Hollander fan as far as the translations go. I just like the poetic styling of it. I know Jackson Crawford's all the rage right now. Because dude studies Old Norse, that's what he does. So he's quite the educated man when it comes to the time period and the linguistic elements of things. He is not a heathen, so keep that in mind. He does not follow heathenry, and as such, he lacks cultural insight sometimes into it. There's a lot of general nuanced elements of Inengarth, Utengard, the Norse concept of good and evil, as far as, or the Northern European element of good and evil, inner versus outer, stuff like that. Some of that is not his purview. He's like purely from historical, linguistic, and some cultural element. He does not get into the esoteric, but he does love the stories. So I love his stuff. He's a lot of fun. Plus he's got a cool voice. But yeah, he knows his stuff, generally speaking. So I think while we're sitting here, before I get started, I am going to cue it up. So y'all can watch me cue it in post and not have to watch me cue it in the actual episode, so that I'm not sitting here, finding the correct stanza while, you guys are watching. You can watch it here or skip it. Who knows? It's in the post, so it is what it is. Anywho, let's get started, shall we? All right, we're live in 3, 2, 1. Let's jam.
And now we edit. Yeah, it's good. It's good edits. Yeah, it's good. I like this. It's good edits. Yes, it's good video. Hello.
I know I'm retarded. I don't care. It's fun. Great work.
Not quite. How much fun is it to watch a man light a cigar? I'd rather not watch it because it's off frame anyway.
I'm retarded. Alright, once again, it's the Punch Diablo. I like these. This is a 60 ring gauge box press. Beefy, dirty, bold little smoke. Very nice. Very earthy, very leathery. I like a nice thick ring gauge on a cigar, but it depends, Sometimes I like a thinner cigar specifically because it's about the ratio of filler to wrapper. The wrapper is where you get most of the flavor, but the filler gives the fullness and robustness and smoke volume. So you can get a super tasty cigar that doesn't have much volume or draw and is just kind of, it's like those little cigarillos. I don't have them on me, but I do have a couple of this kind, the punch, because of the flavor and everything. And they're okay, you know, they're all right. But it's all flavor and no volume. It's not like you would get off of one of these. Even though the length can be long. Plus, I find that sometimes those little ones are a little too bitey. For whatever that's worth. But there are some, especially in a more medium to lighter-bodied smoke, that I prefer a thinner ring gauge on to increase the ratio of wrapper to binder, so as to really pull it in and to give it that flavor. You know, it really gives you the fullness of what that cigar is about. If I had to guess, or if I had to choose, I would say the sweet spot for ratio of wrapper to binder is probably about a 54, give or take, I think. And which is why you see a lot of Robustos and a lot of Toros and things like that are in the 52 to 54 range, maybe 56. It refers to how big around the cigar is. Anyway, I find that's kind of the sweet spot there on taste, flavor, all of that. So anyway, I don't know if you care, but that's where we're going. And I'm not going to film all of this because I could sit here and prattle on while I make my video. But it actually slows down my video editing because I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm saying and what I'm doing all at the same time, instead of just focusing on what I need to be doing. And so I'm going to sign off from here, but I don't know. I kind of liked giving you guys a taste of the edit world last time, and then, you know, a bit of the smoke. When I have the time, I like to smoke during edit as opposed to trying to, you know, do it during the video, because as you've seen, I don't really get to smoke on it during the filming. So I prefer to do it during the editing when I can actually sit and enjoy it and take my time doing what I do. This is how we edit it. Anyway, thank you guys. Laters.